Welcome to another acrylic painting demo. We're gonna start with soupy mix of a purple made with alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. When I say soupy, it does have a little water. A lot of people don't recommend using water with acrylics, but I find it a very easy way. This is a large brush, as you can see from the size of the canvas. And this time I'm painting on a 9x12 canvas. So the first thing we're gonna do with a very diluted mix of purple, we're gonna make a sort of a line which is slightly below the middle of the canvas. And that's gonna be the horizon. As you can see, my hand is shaking. I think I've had too much coffee today, but it doesn't really matter. This will be fixed in time. But that way we fix the horizon line is slightly lower than the middle point. So maybe I went too high, which is good that you see me correcting. So the horizon is gonna be lower and we're gonna make that lighter. Then about a third of the canvas down, we're gonna make, all of this is gonna be dark, except close to the horizon, with a little bit of an edge here. And then we're gonna make sort of a square here. All of this is going to be in the dark. So we go ahead and put that soupy mix of the nice purple. You can see, alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue make a very nice purple. There's many different ways. I have other videos that explain how to make different kinds of purple. And at this point, it's very soupy. When I make my mixes, I have the alizarin crimson on one side, and I have the ultramarine blue on the other. And then in between, I have different gradations. So you can choose towards the bluer side, or you can choose towards the purplish, more reddish side. And that's really your style and whatever you choose to make it. So I'm going to make a little bit more on the red side. I'm gonna make here a dark area. This is gonna be a building. So painting buildings is always a pain in the neck because we tend to try to make a lot of details. My recommendation is we're gonna try to make today, if I can, a loose painting with not much details, but the general impression of light. And this painting is gonna be for the first time in my video series. If you follow my series, and if this is the first time you see them, just go and check the others. But I'm gonna focus more on the sky this time. So after you have this structure, this is gonna be a structure. This is New London, Connecticut. And this is the pier that's close to the train station and the ferry. And it does have like a deck area. So this is gonna be dark. We're gonna shape this with the back, and this is going to be some of the darkest places. There's going to be like a small pier or a pylon structure here with its reflection on the water. There's another sort of crooked pylon which makes I think it makes a nice detail, that pylon that's crooked there, and then the reflection on the water should go on the other direction from that pylon. Boy, I really have had a lot of coffee today, I think. Okay, so that's basically it. We're gonna be reestablishing these darks again pretty soon. But for now, this is the structure that we're gonna be working with. Now, what you need to have is a piece of a rag. It could be paper towel or a rag, and just wipe your dark color. This is not too much paint that you're wasting, and then you dunk I'm doing this off camera, your brush in clean water, and you clean this. What I'm going to do now is fix that horizon line, because as I mentioned to you, it was too high. So erasing the line is really not a problem while your acrylic or oil is still wet. I don't know much about watercolor, but I believe it is easier, at least for me, to do this in acrylics or oils. In watercolors, I think you can fix mistakes, but it's probably more challenging. So if you're painting in watercolor, or if you're doing pastels, or you're doing any other media, just consider the media that you are painting with. You can use this example. So as you can see, the horizon now, which is going to be a clean line of the horizon in there, it's lower as it should have been from the beginning. This is what happens when painting, real time while I am doing the demo is, I make mistakes and you see the mistakes, but you can also get to see how to correct them. So I'm just going to reestablish the top of this pylon here, which goes above that. And actually at the same level in height, there's another pylon here. I don't really know if these pylons are attached, if this one is attached to this structure. It's all very dark. I took this photo during a sunset, and photos actually get things very sort of two-dimensional, and you don't see colors very well. But that's good for the purpose of this demo. All right, what I'd like to do now is establish a bit more of the dark with another layer on top of what we had of the same purple, alizarin crimson, and ultramarine blue. So it's going to be the darkest dark we're going to have in this area, and it goes to the right with a slight angle. That's because of the perspective from which I took this particular photo. This is going to be quite dark, so it doesn't really have a lot of details, but it is important that you establish, because this will be the darkest dark. The sunset was right in front of me, so figures that are against the sunset tend to be very dark. As you can see, because the first layer is still wet, I'm trying to establish a darker layer, and what I'm doing really is removing paint. So we should be moving on to the next step, and this is all reflections in the water, which wiggly lines always remind us that's going to be water. Okay? All right, so now we're going to add a lot more of water. For now, I don't want to introduce white yet, but I want to make this a very light purple. And that's going to be for the back, which probably already has that very nice purple, was sort of by mistake. And the description of this video has the materials that I am using. I'm just trying to establish a line in the back, which is going to be sort of New London, a very vague New London skyline. It is coming a bit too dark, no problem. I am using a linen. It's a pad, one of those that you can actually get. It's a pad of paper, and it's taped to the back of my cardboard here that I use for these demos. Okay, so horizon line, remember the water, remember the principles of physics. The water usually has to be quite straight. If you want to use a ruler, feel free to use a ruler. I usually avoid that. And we will just reestablish that dark here. I'm sorry, I'm sort of erasing myself a lot. Okay, I think it's about time to introduce a little bit of yellow. So to that same purple, I'm going to add, this is Indian yellow, which is a transparent yellow. And if I do it on top of the purple, it gives me a greenish color. I don't want green. There's not much green in this painting. So what I do is, to that color, I add a bit more of the alizarin crimson to the Indian yellow and purple. And what I get is sort of a brownish, dirty color. And that's going to be basically for this structure. Like I said, I don't want to establish it too much, and I want to promise you that I will avoid as much as I can, because it's very tempting to just go on all of the details. But I'm just going to establish a few of these rooftops. This was one of those nice New England buildings. Now the perspective in here goes higher here, and then it opens up lower here. So that's the way that we need to do it. And there were a lot of, I think this was like a boat yard. There were a lot of boats around here, but we're not gonna paint those. And this is kind of a structure that's in the back of this building. So we're gonna leave this as is with that soupy mix, and we're gonna come back with some elements of light. So it's 10 minutes into this demo. It's a 9x12, a little larger than I've been using before. And we should already be seeing, or maybe it's my imagination, but sort of a structure here that's like a building, which is a building. Then we see like a little wall here that continues here, and the two pylons. And this is all gonna be reflections in the water. I'm not gonna draw any of the details of the cars that were parked in here, and then boats, as I mentioned. Okay, time to clean the brush. We are going to introduce a little bit of the white. The first thing that I want to do, and I don't actually follow an order, even though if you watch my videos, you might think that I have a formula. I don't. I don't have a formal formula. I think the painting just tells me what's next. So what I want to establish next is this area here and this area of the back end. And we're gonna end with the sky and the water. So white, and what I think I'm gonna do is the same mixture I had for this area that we used. I'm going to add that white to that soupy mix that had more alizarin crimson than ultramarine blue, and it also had a little bit of the Indian yellow. Going back, you don't want to do too much of the Indian yellow because yellow brings things closer. So I want to get sort of a nice purple color, but what we call desaturated, so sort of light. Let's see if this works. If it doesn't work, you always try what you created. You try it on your canvas, and if it's not what I want, it's not. It looks very brown, whereas it didn't. So I'm going to just reestablish my color for the back, which I want it to be a soft reddish purple. So let's forget Indian yellow, and let's use just the ultramarine blue, the alizarin crimson, and white. And in this mix, when you are making the mix, you can get it bluer, which is not what I want, or a little bit more reddish purple, which is what I'm looking for. So we are going to, that's too dark, so we just add more white to the mixture. The lightest area of this painting is going to be the sky. So let's see, that, I don't know why, it does look brownish. Okay, I think time to clean the brush a bit more thoroughly in the clean water. I have several buckets of water, and just make sure that I'm cleaning it, and just get, again, this is what happens with painting. It's fun. You continue making your mixes. So I'm gonna establish that purple, and then to that purple I am going to add a lot more of the white that I had started before. And I think there's no or very little Indian yellow. You probably are wondering why I don't change brushes. I like to try to push myself to do a painting with one brush. I have no idea why, but the few times that I've enjoyed plein air painting, it's actually very easy to just pack and carry on your back the least amount of weight possible. It's funny, it still looks a bit more brownish than I wanted, but let's just go on and see if this is gonna work. We can always paint more layers on top. Okay, So now what we will be doing is establishing also a bit more blue in that mixture of violet that we have. And just this building here, which is in the back, is in the back of this building. Just insinuate some area in there. When I paint buildings, oftentimes I just choose the size of my brush for these structures, so I'm not fighting against what I'm painting. Okay, so that's kind of a building in the back of this other building that's in the front. The next thing we're going to do is add a little bit more blue to that mixture. See if this works. And this is going to be for this area. We are in this area, which was nondescript, sort of a parking area. I don't want it to be too specific, I should say. And I am mixing a little bit more of the alizarin crimson to get more of a dirty, yes, this is, you know, is going to be an area that's very dark. It's against the sunset. And, you know, this is going, I hope, you know, to be more of an expression of how the colors are giving us the impression of what we are painting, of the structures that we're painting. Okay. So, with that said, we are going to clean the brush. Time to change my rag or paper towel. So, get most of the paint out and dunk it in the water to clean it as thoroughly as possible. Okay, and let's see what happens, because I don't know why I was getting that brownish color, which wasn't very pleasant at all. All right, so once we have established more or less where the shapes are going, we're gonna begin with cleaning an area of the palette. I have now several areas of brownish colors and mixes that I'm going to use. But right now I wanted to have an area of cleaner space for a lot of white and, depending on how strong your white is, a tiny bit of blue. And you start mixing it, leaving, you know, the blue on one side and the white in the other, so you don't mix all of it at the same time. The sky is usually darker in the top. So this is probably a bit too light because it was a sunset, it was an afternoon. I had just returned and I used the train. And this was in the back of the train station. I'm in the train station looking at this pier where the ferries leave, etc. So this is ultramarine blue and white, and we are going to do the first layer of the sky. This sky is going to have many different layers and it's going to have more details. I think I didn't support this very well, so you probably are seeing moving. I hope it doesn't disturb you too much. I don't know how to pause the video and secure this a bit more. Okay, as we go down, it will be getting a bit lighter, so it's just adding white. And you can see with just adding it where we have the paint below. With acrylic, you need to work fast to be able to blend. Otherwise, it's really difficult to blend the colors with acrylic. Much easier to do that in oils. So we're just covering this, and it's going to get a bit warmer and lighter. This means it's going to have a hint of turquoise color going closer to the horizon, and it's going to be a lighter color, less blue. And what we're gonna do for that, if we add yellow, we may be able to make some sort of a turquoise color. If you have a lot of colors in your palette, then you can go ahead and mix a little bit of a turquoise color. Because I'm using a limited palette, believe it or not, adding a little bit of Viridian green, you can see it's tiny, tiny, tiny bit, to that mix of the sky, it's gonna make it look more turquoise. And if I added yellow, like a cadmium yellow, it makes it look more green. So it's adding green makes it look less green, more turquoise, rather than adding yellow. Yellow makes it look greener. And that was too dark. So probably too dark still. And as you can see, it's a trial and error. On your canvas, the good thing with acrylics is that you can change the acrylics as you go. You can fix everything. Okay, now we are going to shape this area in the back, which looked like a, I don't know if it was, looks more like a hill with plants in the back. So I am sort of shaping those areas. It didn't look much like buildings, so I think it may be a public park. I would probably need to check in the map what's behind that train station and ferry station. And here I'm going to be trying to make this building look like you go around it, and that's a way to sort of shape this building here. Same here, we have a rooftop here, and then in this area, I think I went too high, which is fine. You paint usually a bit more than what you need. That's like a turret, and it's gonna look like that pretty soon. Boy, using this canvas pad, I don't think was a very good idea. It's moving a lot, and it's even making it difficult for me, but I cannot stop right now and change. Anyway, sorry about that. I hope you stay with me, you be patient, and you will be, I hope, enjoying this painting. Okay, so we go now down here, and this pylon, just very non-specifically painting around it. We will establish that pylon is going to be the darkest area. And here it was just the open seas. This is the North Atlantic. Okay. Okay, and this is a linen panel, I think I did mention that. So now we're going to go for the water. And for the water, we're going to introduce more of the Viridian green and that blue. The water has more turquoise in general, and it's going to be darker in the bottom. So we are going to establish the dark area first with that turquoise color. And I'm mixing ultramarine blue, Viridian green, and white. It is still too light, but we're gonna go ahead because this is gonna be like the base color, and it will be darker in the bottom and lighter in the top. So we again paint around this area, and it, like I mentioned, it is much lighter in the horizon for both. I do see the horizon line. It's sometimes with some days that are sort of cloudy days, misty days, you don't clearly see the horizon where, you know, the water and the sky may actually be difficult to separate because of the mist. But in this particular one, I can see it. And one thing I will be fixing is that the sky is lighter than the water, so that will be fixed. This pylon needs to have a straight line, so we'll come back and reestablish, and then these wiggly lines of water, they come here. Which are sort of the wavy areas or waves in the water. Okay, so let's finish establishing. Like I mentioned, establish the water. It's the first layer, so darker here. And you can see I have not mixed my colors completely. This works very well for me. I mean, you can have your own style and you can decide how you want to do your own waves. But in my hands, this works really well because I surprise myself with how the waves are coming. I don't know which area is going to have the dark and which area is going to have the light, but it gives the impression at the end of waves because they have a shadow area and a light area. And I've mentioned in other of my videos that sometimes I'm not very good at contextualizing what I'm painting. It's probably because I don't have a formal training. So I'm not thinking of, what is this area, where is the light should be coming. I just paint the impression of what I see, and I like the results. It's amateur painting. I think if you are an amateur painter, you might enjoy it. So I'm just going around this. I don't know what it was, but I like the fact that it was sort of on the water there, but leaning. And we will be working on this. This was too light, as I mentioned, so it needs to be slightly darker than the sky. And then we have also that line of water coming all the way here, and I can see it in here. So this area of water was not reflecting the land behind, but we will have some reflections of the sunlight. Okay, so again, it's painting around this dark shape so that we can describe this was a wall and then this pylon. How long do I want to make this pylon? I think the pylon came all the way, we said, all the way here. So we need to make sure that there's the water. The water is going to help us establish where the water, where the reflection is and where is the structure that it is reflecting. So wiggly lines for water and lighter here. Okay, all right. I am a little bit of an angle so you can have a straight vision, and that's why it's hard for me sometimes to make sure that we're having a straight line in there. As you can see, my brush deposited some white that seems to be pure white. I don't really use pure white, but it looks like it, and it's fine. We will continue working on the water. Okay. All right, so we have the water, we have the basis of the sky. This is going to be more of a sky painting. So let's move on. First, I want to just reestablish some darks. I'm thinking about it. Is that what I want to do? Well, since I have this blue color of the water, let's just make here with, this is sort of a dry brush painting, or dry brush is because you're painting on top of a dried area, and some of these are, I like to just chisel the edge of your brush as much as you can. It depends on the quality of your brush, And we're going to I just want to remind myself that this was all sort of a reflection, and this is the wall. Okay, so once I've done that, there were some areas that needed some definition. Actually, I think I painted this too low because there was like a fence in here, so I will be painting that. And there were some areas with some same color, so it's sort of a it's a blue, but it's not a very bright blue, and there were some areas on this edge that were catching the light. So let's go ahead and just establish those before we continue working, because I have this, and there was an area here of light in those two pylons. I don't know if it's a hole or if it has a light in there, but that's the way I saw it, so that's how I'm painting it. Okay, where do I need more light? I am going to put a bit more of the light area. There's a light rectangle here, and I hope it will make sense soon. This is a roof, but it is getting a shadow from this structure here, which is getting the light. So the light was coming probably from this area, not from behind. Okay, and there was this area was also getting the light. Like I said, I don't want to be describing these rooftops in much detail, but with a few elements, I'm hoping that I can establish more or less these shapes. Okay, and the angle here should be, this angle is probably not as deep as it should be. This angle should be a bit more pronounced. And because that's the color of the sky, which is very similar to the color that I had, it's just lighter. I'm just using a bit more of the white with that color. And this building behind, I don't know what building was that exactly, or what was that building doing there, but it definitely was in the back, and it looks in the back because we used blue. Blue and lighter colors push things back, whereas red and yellow with less white push things to the front. Okay, now this building here it was like getting the most light, and it had like 3 windows on that end. And again, this is just with I added some white, as you can, if you remember, I added some white for the sky, and that's what I'm using here to establish a little bit of that area. And this rooftop was interesting because it was getting light, but it's also getting a bit of the shadow from this other building. So just with some straight lines, hopefully we can start understanding a little bit that it is a building. Now I put a little bit more of blue to sort of describe the turret a bit better. Okay. So what we are going to do now is, let's begin. Before I go to the darks, I am going to begin working a bit on some areas of the sky. So I am going to add alizarin crimson to that same mix that I had for the area of the water. And there was like a cloud here. The color of the sky was just beautiful. I'm adding just a little bit more of water. I'm sorry, white. I'm not adding water at all. I'm just describing this particular cloud by just brushing on top of what we have here. And then with now a little bit of water, just a little bit, oops, I'm just going to try to make sure that this slowly goes with the back. I want this to be sort of a soft sky, but it's going to be a dramatic sky. Time to take away the excess and work on this area, mixing it a little bit with what was there before. And I believe it will benefit from getting a bit more of the white. So just white on top of this purple. And yeah, it was like, I like the alizarin crimson because it's not a very strong red. It's a transparent red. And for the skies, it just gives an interesting color. You know, when you have those nice summer sunsets and you get all of these colors in the clouds and the sky. So adding a bit more of the white that was trickling sort of that color around here. And as you can see, I don't have it very well mixed, and that's the idea. So we are going to get more, you know, brighter as we get to the bottom, to the horizon, with these clouds. And I don't want these clouds to have what we call sharp edges. So you saw what I did was just to work on top of the edge that I had before. And I'm just pushing what I have here in terms of the colors that I have here. I'm just pushing it with the brush. Brush strokes are like handwriting, so it's your own style. You develop your own style, but we're gonna start creating more of a cloudy, moody sense of sky. And the sunset was reflecting a lot of light towards this area. So we're gonna make this expression here of a nondescript shapes that have a mix of the bluer and the pinkish colors for these elements here on the clouds, and really just move it around. See, I don't even know that I'm going to be getting more blue here, but it's just making sure that I get some of these areas. As I promised you, this was going to be a painting where the sky was going to be the star of the painting. Hopefully you will agree that this is a painting more descriptive of the sky. I am getting a bit more with the white color, and oh, that's a nice rosy pink color that I wasn't expecting, but I think it works really nice. And we're gonna make it, why not? Let's try to bring that rosy color, not getting rid completely of the blue behind, but I like that rosy shape. And as you can see, I'm just sort of dry brushing on top of the rest. Acrylics dry darker, and they also dry fast. So as you can see, some of this paint I'm trying to push and pull, it's already dry, but that's fine. I mean, when you're painting skies, you don't necessarily know exactly, the shapes of the clouds change, and you should be able to detect that in your color. That's actually a bit too bright for that area. So I'm getting a bit more of that same mix with the alizarin crimson that I had before. And I think I'm putting a bit more of the red. I'm daring to put a bit more red in here for this area, and just mix it here. And again, this is your painting. You can decide what you want to put in there. I am adding just a tiny bit of the blue so that it's not completely red. We're getting some blue. This is basically alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and white, titanium white. And again, shapes of clouds are whimsical. You decide. Or you can let the brush decide for you. Sometimes that's what I do. I'm going to I think that on the corners I like it better that we get the mix with the blue sky. So I'm adding a bit more of the blue to the mix that I had. And we're just gonna paint a bluer area here. So as you can see, it's paint in layers. Add a bit more of the white and just work it together. So I wanted to make this transition. And I'm not using any medium and I'm not using much water. It's hard to push and pull this paint, but at the end, I think it works better. If you're pushing and pulling and getting a bit desperate with this, you can always add a tiny bit of water, not too much, to make sure that you can mix it. And I like to take a bit of that and just work it through. This pink color, I like to blend it in the top a little bit with the blue. And on this area, it was definitely lighter. So I'm going for straight white on top of the previous paint that I had applied. As you can see, it's just a light brush stroke. For the sky, I like it to have less of a brush stroke notable or visible. And for the clouds, I do like to have the clouds with some brush strokes that describe the clouds. Okay, now here we're gonna make that turret. As you can remember, the buildings, we basically are not describing them yet. We are still far from getting those completely described, those buildings, but you're starting to see the image of the building. Let's see, this was a light area. The lightest area is here, and we will be working on that. And then there are some light areas in here where the skies were opening up. I don't remember if it was raining that day or if it was threatening with rain. I do remember it was a very hot day in the summer, and I just stepped out from the train and saw this gorgeous view, and before I took a taxi, I had to take a photo. And it's very good sometimes to paint plein air, but when you don't have the time, just take a photo and a mental note of what you remember from those days. In those areas where I saw some of the lighter areas, you can see that I added a bit of white, and sometimes this white just mix it lightly with the rest of the cloud color. And sometimes we are tempted to everything mix it and blend it, but it's good to leave some strokes not defined. Now that cloud here did not look very good, so I'm just going to try to blend, as you can see, with all of the colors I have in my brush. Okay. Some areas of the sky are gonna look, and you'll see that as soon as this dries, adding a touch of bright blue will make this look really interesting. I think I got rid of too much of this red, and it's just for harmony and understanding what's happening here in the sky that I'm trying to add a bit more of this mix of the red and blue color. Red is alizarin crimson. I don't know if I am going to use cadmium red for this one, but you will you will have the description of all the materials that I used and all the colors I used in the description of this video. Okay, all right, so it's time to wipe the brush again. Okay, and we are almost done. I don't want to do a painting on the buildings. I want to do a painting, like I mentioned, with attention to a dramatic sky. So we will see what else do I need in the sky. I think that a darker cloud might benefit the sky. So I have my mixture that I used for this area. If you don't have it, it's alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and white. A good amount of white, because even though it's a dark cloud, it's not as dark as we think. So it's sort of this, see, it's the same color that I used there. So I'm just going to make some shapes in here. And this is going to be sort of a darker area of the cloud. And there's a darker area of the cloud here. And also in here, there's some shapes that are darker areas. Okay, so once I put that, I just go to the mix that has more of the white, and let's see if this works. Just try to see that what I'm doing, or what I'm trying to do, is to leave an area of the darker cloud, but sort of soften it, because, you know, clouds are not solid. I mean, they're gas, and their shapes or their edges should be describing more or less that the material of the cloud is not necessarily a solid thing on the sky. So we will be softening some of this area on this particular cloud, and then on this particular cloud. And actually, I want to change a little bit the color to having a bit more of the pinkish alizarin crimson tone in here. And I think that's going to work because, like I said, we're going to have an area of more bright clouds that are actually in this area here. So this pinkish color is from the reflection of that light from the sunset. Okay, and I think it's going to benefit from having a bit more in here of that also sort of more pinkish color in here on this cloud. I did mention the acrylics dry darker, so when you paint, just make sure that you don't make things too dark. And if they were too dark, I'm adding some white on top of this to blend a bit more with white in this bottom area of the clouds. And if there's a cloud in particular that you like and you don't want to do exactly what I am doing or placing the colors where I am placing them, go ahead and paint your own clouds, make your own painting the way that you like it better. Okay, this was opening up, and all right, so it's time to introduce yellow. We have almost not done any yellow at all, and it's about time that we do that. Okay, so here this cloud had a darker but wispy area on the bottom. Most clouds, you know, they do have a volume, and usually the top is lighter. Okay, to introduce the yellow, what we are going to do is clean the brush, and if it doesn't come out completely clean after I wiped it and I put it in clean water, then I will change colors. But hey, it did come out pretty clean. I hope you can see. So I am going to continue using the same brush. Like I said, I'm a bit stubborn. Let's try with the Indian yellow and white in an area of your palette where it's clean. You don't have any of the blue and red. I want a golden color here for this particular area in the sky. So we are going to put some golden yellow here in the sky. These were very dramatic clouds, and in here there was like a golden area, and there's a golden area around this purple. Sort of a, well, I think they call it silver lining, but in my case it's golden. More white to that golden color, and we're just going to establish some of these lighter areas where I was seeing this beautiful light reflected in here. And there was some more in here of a lighter color, lighter white, lighter yellow, I should say, and a bit more white. So I'm just establishing slowly. As you can see, I am building sort of these reflections or these sky colors that I saw in that beautiful afternoon. Okay, now I am going to try to blend this a little bit with a pinkish color. So I'm gonna get like a salmon-y color, like color of salmon, just using a tiny bit of the red on top of that yellow, and it's bringing it, like you see, it's less yellow. It's more of a salmon color for these areas in here closer to the horizon. And more white at the bottom. As I mentioned, the horizon is where you see the lightest area, both on the sky and the water. So, or if you're painting a landscape and you have a landscape, it's the horizon is the lightest area of your painting, and the lightest area of the painting is the sky. So the sky, horizon sky, is the lightest area if you are doing landscape paintings, of course. I think it does apply to still lifes and portraits. I mean, it's the way that light reflects, and when you have something far away or like in the horizon, it is lighter. So I'm just re-establishing some points here in layers that have a little bit of the light in here. Okay, and it's just now it's that salmon-y color that I created together with the white that I had before, and it's just slowly building up the layers. And where you want to blend is probably in the horizon. You don't want to have it too established. Okay, now this color here is not showing up in the rest of the photo, but I want to reflect it somewhere else so that it doesn't look too odd and too out of place in the painting. Your painting needs to make sense. So it's always good to see what other colors you have or what other areas of the painting may benefit from having that bright color. Now, the whole horizon needs to be lighter, and I had made it all blue. So I'm going to try to transition from this very bright, or light, I should say, the light color that I have here, and probably blend it eventually with a little bit more of the blue. And maybe some see-through, if this is vegetation, some areas where you can see through, like it's, I don't know, I think it's a park. I think I said that already. Okay, so now I'm adding a little bit of blue. It's not too much, but it's just a little bit so that it works with this area. And I need to make it lighter and a cleaner blue. So that I'm trying to just establish the back there of the horizon with a light color, and not all of it needs to be in the yellowish tone. We can have, this was too light, too bright, or too white for the sky. So I am using ultramarine blue with a lot of white and that yellow mixture. And it seems to me that's still a bit dark. Yeah, and you know, it's nice to use, you know, juicy pieces of paint. You know, like you see, it's almost like buttery paint. It's something that I enjoy a lot. This is getting a bit more turquoise than I thought I wanted, but I think it's working okay, especially on this area of the painting. And there has to be, you know, you need to just see what the painting is asking you. Sometimes that's the important thing, is that you do what you think is best for your painting. It's not a formula, at least not in my case, not a formulaic solution of the painting. Okay, that was too green, so I'm going to be using the mixture I had with blue. I'm not cleaning the brush, so I'm still having a little bit of that yellow, but I want this to be bluer, and bluer here in the sky. So this was a sky that in the previous iterations of painting did not have any yellow or green, but now I am mixing it to bring some shapes here. Sometimes what you see is the sky is, you can see through the sky, and there's areas of the sky that are actually reflecting that bright light. And this area of the sky, make it blue, but a little bit lighter. Yes, I think it was, it's too light for this area. Again, you can paint it as light as you want. It is your painting. And here, I did mention this one here. It's actually making the shape of these clouds. This was a smaller cloud, so let's just not make it that large. Okay, and then there was this other shape of cloud. And it's basically going to continue the painting with this same establishing the correct blue, correct for your painting, for your idea of how you want it. And I think in this case, I'm liking the way that this particular blue is working in the sky. There were some areas that this particular blue looked sort of lighter and with more of that turquoise area on some of these places. And probably the Viridian green is gonna help us, even though in the past I did not use Viridian green for the sky. It does add a little bit of that punchy sort of turquoise color that I was seeing reflected in some of these areas of the sky, especially close to that yellowish sky. And this particular cloud, we are just going to work around it to make it in a shape. It looks wispy and a bit nondescript. And then for the bottom of this area, there's less specific shapes. The more you go farther, the smaller the clouds, but also the less the changes in colors, etc. So we are just establishing some of the sky here. It was definitely light in this area, so I just added a bit more of the white. Sometimes you have to go in stages and see how lighter or darker you want an area, and with acrylic paints like this one, you can fix, and you can, painting in layers, you can re-establish some of the areas that you think are not working very well. So in this case, I want to open up areas of blue sky in between some of these clouds. That was too light for the top, so I'm just introducing a bit more of the ultramarine blue, and there we go. Just brush it so that it gets a bit more wispy, less defined. I think there was more sky here